proudly presents Gildan Seminars, original lectures containing essential information that can be applied to every facet of life and business. Gildan Media presents Richest Man in Babylon, a seminar by Dennis Waitley.
Hello, this is Dennis Waitley. For all who desire to get ahead financially, who want financial independence, there are secrets that only a small percentage of the population understands and applies, but that are available to everyone who really wants to gain personal freedom and financial security. These simple secrets are illustrated in an incredibly powerful book written many decades ago entitled The Richest Man in Babylon. It has become an American classic that is probably the most profound philosophy ever written on the subject of personal finances. Although written as an historical reference to ancient Babylonian times, the daily struggle to make ends meet and save for the future is virtually the same now as it was then. More often than not, there is more month than money. So the proverbial question continues today as it did then. How did the richest man in Babylon become the richest man in all Babylon? And what can his wisdom teach me about becoming wealthy today in our highly competitive modern culture? The answers to these questions are contained in this paraphrased Money Mastery audio version of George Clayson's timeless book. What you are about to hear are the most empowering financial concepts available anywhere from any source. They apply equally to women and men. Following these principles in your daily routine will bring financial peace and harmony to your life, particularly when you apply the Money Mastery system to implement these concepts. Money Mastery is the easy-to-use, step-by-step detailed program that will give you the peace of mind and financial independence that we all strive for ourselves and for our loved ones. So welcome to the richest man in Babylon. In old Babylon, there once lived a certain very rich man named Arcad. Far and wide he was famed for his great wealth. Also was he famed for his generosity. He was generous in his charities. He was generous with his family. He was liberal in his own expenses. But nevertheless, each year, his wealth increased more rapidly than he spent it. And there were certain friends of younger days who came to him and said, "You, Arcad, are more fortunate than we. You've become the richest man in all Babylon while we struggle for existence. You can wear the finest garments and you can enjoy the rarest foods, while we must be content if we can clothe our families in raiment that is presentable and feed them as best we can. Yet once we were equal. We studied under the same master. We played in the same games, and in neither the studies nor the games did you outshine us. And in the years since, you've been no more an honorable citizen than we, nor have you worked harder or more faithfully insofar as we can judge. Why, then, should a fickle fate single you out to enjoy all the good things of life and ignore us who are equally deserving?" Thereupon Arcad remonstrated with them, saying, "If you have not acquired more than a bare existence in the years since we were youths, it is because you either have failed to learn the laws that govern the building of wealth, or else you do not observe them. Fickle fate is a vicious goddess who brings no permanent good to anyone. On the contrary, she brings ruin to almost every man upon whom she showers unearned gold. She makes wanton spenders who soon dissipate all they receive and are left beset by overwhelming appetites and desires they have not the ability to gratify. Yet others whom she favors become misers and hoard their wealth, fearing to spend what they have, knowing they do not possess the ability to replace it. They further are beset by fears of robbers and doom themselves to lives of emptiness and secret misery. Others there probably are who can take unearned gold and add to it and continue to be happy and contented citizens, but so few are they. I know of them but by hearsay. Think you of the men who have inherited sudden wealth, and see if these things are not so." His friends admitted that of the men they knew, who had inherited great wealth, these words were true, and they besought him to explain to them how he had become possessed of so much property. So he continued, "In my youth, I looked about me and saw all the good things there were to bring happiness and contentment, and I realized that wealth increased the potency of all these. Wealth is a power. With wealth, many things are possible. One may ornament the home with the richest of furnishings. One may sail the distant seas. One may feast on the delicacies of far lands. One may buy the ornaments of the gold worker and the stone polisher. One may even build mighty temples for the gods. One may do all these things and many others, in which there is delight for the senses and gratification for the soul. And when I realized all this, I declared to myself that I would claim my share of the good things of life. I would not be one of those who stand afar off, enviously watching others enjoy. I would not be content to clothe myself in the cheapest raiment that looked respectable. I would not be satisfied with the lot of a poor man. On the contrary, I would make myself a guest at this banquet of good things. Being, as you know, the son of a humble merchant, one of a large family with no hope of an inheritance, and not being endowed, as you have so frankly said, with superior powers or wisdom, I decided that if I was to achieve what I desired, time and study would be required. As for time, all men have it in abundance. You, each of you, have let slip by sufficient time to have made yourselves wealthy. Yet you admit you have nothing to show except your good families, of which you can be justly proud. As for study, did not our wise teacher teach us that learning was of two kinds, the one kind being the things we learned and knew, and the other being in the training that taught us how to find out what we did not know? Therefore did I decide to find out how one might accumulate wealth, and when I had found out, to make this my task and do it well. For is it not wise that we should enjoy while we dwell in the brightness of the sunshine? For sorrows enough shall descend upon us when we depart for the darkness of the world of spirit. I found employment as a scribe in the hall of records, and long hours each day I labored upon the clay tablets. Week after week and month after month I labored, yet for my earnings I had not to show. Food and clothing and penance to the gods and other things of which I could remember not what absorbed all my earnings. But my determination did not leave me. And one day, Algamish, the moneylender, came to the house of the city master and ordered a copy of the 9th law. And he said to me, "I must have this in 2 days, and if the task is done by that time, 2 coppers will I give to thee." And so I labored hard, but the law was long, and when Algamish returned, the task was unfinished. He was angry, and had I been his slave, he would have beaten me. But knowing the city master would not permit him to injure me, I was unafraid, and so I said to him, "Algamish, you are a very rich man. Tell me how I also can become rich, and all night I will carve upon the clay, and when the sun rises it shall be completed." He smiled at me and replied, "You are a forward knave, but we will call it a bargain." So all that night I carved, though my back pained and the smell of the wick made my head ache until my eyes could hardly see. But when he returned at sunup, the tablets were complete. "Now," I said, "tell me what you promised. I've fulfilled my part of our bargain." "You have," he said to me kindly, "and I am ready to fulfill mine. I will tell you these things you wish to know, because I am becoming an old man, and an old tongue loves to wag. And when youth come to age for advice, he receives the wisdom of years. But too often does youth think that age knows only the wisdom of days that are gone, and therefore profits not. But remember this, the sun that shines today is the sun that shone when your father was born, and will still be shining when your last grandchild shall pass into the darkness. The thoughts of youth," he continued, "are bright lights that shine forth like the meteors that oft make brilliant the sky. But the wisdom of age is like the fixed stars that shine so unchanged that the sailor may depend upon them to steer his course. Mark you well my words, for if you do not, you will fail to grasp the truth that I will tell you, and you will think that your night's work has been in vain." Then he looked at me shrewdly from under his shaggy brows and said in a low, forceful tone, "I found the road to wealth when I decided that a part of all I earned was mine to keep, and so will you." Then he continued to look at me with a glance that I could feel pierce me, but said no more. "Is that all?" I asked. "That was sufficient to change the heart of a sheepherder into the heart of a moneylender," he replied. "But all I earn is mine to keep, is it not?" I demanded. "Far from it," he replied. "Do you not pay the garment maker? Do you not pay the sandal maker? Do you not pay for the things you eat? Can you live in Babylon without spending? What have you to show for your earnings of the past month? What for the past year, you fool? You pay to everyone but yourself, dullard. You labor for others. As well be a slave and work for what your master gives you to eat and wear. If you did keep for yourself 1/10 of all you earn, how much would you have in 10 years? My knowledge of the numbers did not forsake me, and I answered, "As much as I earn in 1 year." "You speak but half the truth," he retorted. "Every piece of gold you save is a slave to work for you. Every copper it earns is its child that also can earn for you. If you would become wealthy, then what you save must earn, and its children must earn, that all may help to give you the abundance you crave." "You think that I cheat you for your long night's work," he continued, "but I am paying you 1,000 times over if you have the intelligence to grasp the truth I offer you. A part of all you earn is yours to keep. It should be not less than 1/10 no matter how little you earn. It can be as much more as you can afford, but pay yourself first. Do not buy from the clothes maker and the sandal maker more than you can pay out of the rest, and still have enough for food and charity and penance to the gods. Wealth, like a tree, grows from a tiny seed. The first copper you save is the seed from which your tree of wealth shall grow. The sooner you plant that seed, the sooner shall the tree grow. And the more faithfully you nourish and water that tree with consistent savings, the sooner may you bask in contentment beneath its shade." And so saying, he took his tablets and went away. I thought much about what he had said to me, and it seemed reasonable, so I decided that I would try it. Each time I was paid, I took one from each 10 pieces of copper and hid it away, and strange as it may seem, I was no shorter of funds than before. I noticed little difference as I managed to get along without it. But often I was tempted, as my hoard began to grow, to spend it for some of the good things the merchants displayed, brought by camels and ships from the land of the Phoenicians. But I wisely refrained. A 12th month after Algamish had gone, he again returned and said to me, "Son, have you paid to yourself not less than 1/10 of all you've earned for the past year?" I answered proudly, "Yes, master, I have." "That is good," he answered, beaming upon me. "And what have you done with it?" "I have given it to Asmir the brickmaker, who told me he was traveling over the far seas, and in Tyre he would buy from me the rare jewels of the Phoenicians. When he returns, we shall sell these at high prices and divide the earnings." "Every fool must learn," he growled. "But why trust the knowledge of a brickmaker about jewels? Would you go to the bread maker to inquire about the stars? No, by my tunic, you would go to the astrologer if you had the power to think. Your savings are gone, youth. You have jerked your wealth tree up by the roots. But plant another. Try again. And next time, if you would have advice about jewels, go to the jewel merchant. If you would know the truth about sheep, go to the herdsman. Advice is one thing that is freely given away, but watch that you take only what is worth having. He who takes advice about his savings from one who is inexperienced in such matters shall pay with his savings for proving the falsity of their opinions." Saying this, he went away. And it was as he said, for the Phoenicians are scoundrels and sold to Asmir worthless bits of glass that look like gems. But as Algamish had bid me, I again saved each 10th copper, for I now had formed the habit, and it was no longer difficult. Again, 12 months later, Algamish came to the room of the scribes and addressed me. What progress have you made since I last saw you? I have paid myself faithfully, I replied, and my savings I have entrusted to Agur, the shield maker, to buy bronze, and each 4th month he does pay me the rental. That is good. And what do you do with the rental? Well, I do have a great feast with honey and fine wine and spiced cake, and also I've bought a scarlet tunic, and someday I shall buy me a young jackass upon which to ride. To which Algamish laughed, You do eat the children of your savings. Then how do you expect them to work for you? And how can they have children that will also work for you? First, get you an army of golden slaves, and then many a rich banquet may you enjoy without regret. And so saying, he again went away. Nor did I again see him for 2 years, when he once more returned, and his face was full of deep lines, and his eyes drooped, for he was becoming a very old man. And he said to me, Arcad, have you yet achieved the wealth you dreamed of? And I answered, Not yet all that I desire, but some I have, and it earns more, and its earnings earn more. And do you still take the advice of brickmakers? About brickmaking they give good advice, I retorted. Arcad, he continued, you have learned your lessons well. You first learned to live upon less than you could earn. Next, you learned to seek advice from those who were competent through their own experiences to give it. And lastly, you have learned to make gold work for you. You have taught yourself how to acquire money, how to keep it, and how to use it. And therefore, you're competent for a responsible position. I'm becoming an old man. My sons think only of spending and give no thought to earning. My interests are great, and I fear too much for me to look after. If you'll go to Nippur and look after my lands there, I'll make you my partner, and you shall share in my estate. So I went to Nippur and took charge of his holdings, which were large. And because I was full of ambition, and because I had mastered the 3 laws of successfully balancing wealth, I was enabled to increase greatly the value of his properties. And so I prospered much. And when the spirit of Algamish departed for the sphere of darkness, I did share in his estate as he had arranged under the law. So spake Arcad. And when he was finished with his tale, one of his friends said, You were indeed fortunate that Algamish made of you an heir. Fortunate only in that I had the desire to prosper before I first met him. For 4 years did I not prove my definiteness of purpose by keeping 1/10 of all I earned? Would you call a fisherman lucky who for years so studied the habits of the fish that with each changing wind he could cast his nets about them? Opportunity is a haughty goddess who wastes no time with those who are unprepared. You had strong willpower to keep on after you lost your first year's savings. You were unusual in that way, spoke up another. Willpower? Retorted Arcad. What nonsense. Do you think willpower gives a man the strength to lift a burden the camel cannot carry, or to draw a load the oxen cannot budge? Willpower is but the unflinching purpose to carry a task you set for yourself to fulfillment. If I set for myself a task, be it ever so trifling, I shall see it through. How else shall I have confidence in myself to do important things? Should I say to myself, for 100 days as I walk across the bridge into the city, I will pick from the road a pebble and cast it into the stream? I would do it. If on the 7th day I passed by without remembering, I would not say to myself, tomorrow will I cast 2 pebbles which will do as well. Instead, I would retrace my steps and cast the pebble. Nor on the 20th day would I say to myself, Arcad, this is useless. What does it avail you to cast a pebble every day? Throw in a handful and be done with it. No, I would not say that or do it. When I set a task for myself, I complete it, and therefore I am careful not to start difficult and impractical tasks because I love leisure." And then another friend spoke up and said, "If what you tell is true, and it does seem, as you have said, reasonable, then being so simple, if all men did it, there would not be enough wealth to go around." "Wealth grows wherever men exert energy," Arcad replied. "If a rich man builds him a new palace, is the gold he pays out gone? No, the brickmaker has part of it, and the laborer has part of it, and the artist has part of it, and everyone who labors upon the house has part of it. Yet when the palace is completed, is it not worth all its cost? And is the ground upon which it stands not worth more because it's there? And is the ground that adjoins it not worth more because it's there? Wealth grows in magic ways. No man can prophesy the limit of it. Have not the Phoenicians built great cities on barren coasts with the wealth that comes from their ships of commerce on the seas? What then do you advise us to do that we may also become rich?" asked still another of his friends. "The years have passed, and we are no longer young men, and we have nothing put away." "I advise that you take the wisdom of Algamish and say to yourselves, 'A part of all I earn is mine to keep.' Say it in the morning when you first arise. Say it at noon. Say it at night. Say it each hour of every day. Say it to yourself until the words stand out like letters of fire across the sky. Impress yourself with the idea. Fill yourself with the thought. And then take whatever portion seems wise. Let it be not less than 1/10, and lay it away. Arrange your other expenditures to do this if necessary, but lay away that portion first. Soon you'll realize what a rich feeling it is to own a treasure upon which you alone have claim. As it grows, it will stimulate you. A new joy of life will thrill you. Greater efforts will come to you to earn more. For of your increased earnings, will not the same percentage be also yours to keep? Then learn to make your treasure work for you. Make it your slave. Make its children and its children's children work for you. Ensure an income for your future. Look you at the aged, and forget not that in the days to come you also will be numbered among them. And therefore invest your treasure with greatest caution, that it not be lost. Unrealistic rates of return are deceitful sirens that sing but to lure the unwary upon the rocks of loss and remorse. Provide also that your family may not want should the gods call you to their realms. For such protection, it is always possible to make provision with small payments at regular intervals. Therefore, the provident man delays not in the expectation of a large sum becoming available for such a wise purpose. Counsel with wise men. Seek the advice of men whose daily work is handling money. Let them save you from such an error as I made myself in entrusting my money to the judgment of Asmir, the brickmaker. A small return and a safe one is far more desirable than risk. Enjoy life while you're here. Do not overstrain or try to save too much. If 1/10 of all you earn is as much as you can comfortably keep, be content to keep this portion. Live otherwise according to your income, and let not yourself get miserly and afraid to spend. Life is good, and life is rich with things worthwhile and things to enjoy." His friends thanked him and went away. Some were silent because they had no imagination and could not understand, and some were sarcastic because they thought that one so rich should divide with old friends not so fortunate. But some had in their eyes a new light. They realized that Algamish had come back each time to the room of the scribes because he was watching a man work his way out of darkness into light. When that man had found the light, a place awaited him. No one could fill that place until he had for himself worked out his own understanding, until he was ready for opportunity. These latter were the ones who in the following years frequently revisited Arcad, who received them gladly. He counseled with them and gave them freely of his wisdom, as men of broad experience are always glad to do. and he assisted them in so investing their savings that it would bring in a good interest with safety and would neither be lost nor entangled in investments that paid no dividends. The turning point in these men's lives came upon that day when they realized the truth that had come from Algamish to Arcad and from Arcad to them. A part of all you earn is yours to keep. In the next message, you'll learn the 7 cures for a lean purse. The glory of Babylon endures. Down through the ages, its reputation comes to us as the richest of cities, its treasures as fabulous. Yet it was not always so. The riches of Babylon were the results of the wisdom of its people. They first had to learn how to become wealthy. When the good king Sargon returned to Babylon after defeating his enemies, the Elamites, he was confronted with a serious situation. The royal chancellor explained it to the king thus: "After many years of great prosperity brought to our people because your majesty built the great irrigation canals and the mighty temples to the gods, now that these works are completed, the people seem unable to support themselves. The laborers are without employment, the merchants have few customers, the farmers are unable to sell their produce, the people have not enough gold to buy food." "But where has all the gold gone that we spent for these great improvements?" demanded the king. "It has found its way, I fear," responded the chancellor, "into the possession of a very few rich men of our city. It filtered through the fingers of most of our people as quickly as the goat's milk goes through the strainer. Now that the stream of gold has ceased to flow, most of our people have nothing to show for their earnings." The king was thoughtful for some time, and then he asked, "Why should so few men be able to acquire all the gold?" "Because they know how," replied the chancellor. "One may not condemn a man for succeeding because he knows how. Neither may one with justice take away from a man what he has fairly earned to give to men of less ability." "But why," demanded the king, "should not all the people learn how to accumulate gold and therefore become themselves rich and prosperous?" "Quite possible, Your Excellency, but who can teach them? Certainly not the priests, because they know nothing of money-making." "Well, who knows best in all our city how to become wealthy, Chancellor?" asked the king. "Your question answers itself, Your Majesty. Who has amassed the greatest wealth in Babylon?" "Well said, my able Chancellor. It is Arcad. He is the richest man in Babylon. Bring him before me tomorrow." Upon the following day, as the king had decreed, Arcad appeared before him, straight and sprightly, despite his 80 years and 10. "Arcad," spoke the king, "is it true that you are the richest man in Babylon?" "So it is reported, Your Majesty, and no man disputes it." "Well, how did you become so wealthy?" "By taking advantage of opportunities available to all citizens of our good city," Arcad replied candidly. "But you had nothing to start with?" "Only a great desire for wealth. Besides this, nothing." "Arcad," continued the king, "our city is in a very unhappy state because a few men know how to acquire wealth and therefore monopolize it, while the mass of our citizens lack the knowledge of how to keep any part of the gold they receive. It is my desire that Babylon be the wealthiest city in the world, and therefore it must be a city of many wealthy men, and therefore we must teach all the people how to acquire riches. Tell me, Arcad, is there any secret to acquiring wealth? Can it be taught?" "It is practical, Your Majesty. That which one man knows can be taught to others." The king's eyes glowed. "Arcad, you speak the words I wish to hear. Will you lend yourself to this great cause? Will you teach your knowledge to a school for teachers, each of whom shall teach others until there are enough trained to teach these truths to every worthy subject in my domain?" Arcad bowed and said, "I am your humble servant to command. Whatever knowledge I possess will I gladly give for the betterment of my fellow men and the glory of my king. Let your good chancellor arrange for me a class of 100 men, and I will teach to them those 7 cures which did fatten my purse, than which there was none leaner in all Babylon. A fortnight later, in compliance with the king's command, the chosen 100 assembled in the great hall of the Temple of Learning, seated upon colorful rings in a semicircle. Arcad sat beside a small taboret upon which smoked a sacred lamp, sending forth a strange and pleasant odor. "Behold, the richest man in Babylon," whispered a student, nudging his neighbor as Arcad arose. "He is but a man, even as the rest of us." "As a dutiful subject of our great king," Arcad began, "I stand before you in his service. Because once I was a poor youth who did greatly desire gold, and because I found knowledge that enabled me to acquire it, he asks that I impart unto you my knowledge. I started my fortune in the humblest way. I had no advantage not enjoyed as fully by you and every citizen in Babylon. The first storehouse of my treasure was a well-worn purse. I loathed its useless emptiness. I desired that it be round and full, clinking with the sound of gold, and therefore I sought every remedy for a lean purse. I found 7. To you who are assembled before me, shall I explain the 7 cures for a lean purse, which I do recommend to all men who desire much gold. Each day for 7 days will I explain to you one of the 7 remedies. Listen attentively to the knowledge that I will impart. Debate it with me. Discuss it among yourselves. Learn these lessons thoroughly, that you may also plant in your own purses the seed of wealth. First, must each of you start wisely to build a fortune of his own. And then will you be competent, and only then to teach these truths to others. I shall teach to you in simple ways how to fatten your purse. This is the first step leading to the temple of wealth, and no man may climb who cannot plant his feet firmly upon the first step. We shall now consider the first cure. The first cure: start your purse to fattening. Arcad addressed a thoughtful man in the second row. "My good friend, at what craft do you work?" "I," replied the man, "am a scribe and carve records upon clay tablets." "Even at such labor," said Arcad, "did I myself earn my first coppers. Therefore you have the same opportunity to build a fortune." He spoke to a florid-faced man farther back. "Pray tell, what do you do to earn your bread?" "I," responded the man, "am a meat butcher. I do buy the goats the farmers raise and kill them and sell the meat to the housewives and the hides to the sandal makers." "Because you do also labor and earn, you also have every advantage to succeed that I did possess." In this way did Arcad proceed to find out how each man labored to earn his living. And when he had done questioning them, he said, "Now, my students, you can see that there are many trades and labors at which men may earn coins. Each of the ways of earning is a stream of gold from which the worker does divert by his labors a portion to his own purse. And therefore into the purse of each of you flows a stream of coins, large or small, according to his ability. Is this not so?" Thereupon they agreed that it was so. "Then," continued Arcad, "if each of you desires to build for himself a fortune, is it not wise to start by utilizing that source of wealth which he has already established?" To this they agreed. Then Arcad turned to a humble man who had declared himself an egg merchant. "If you select one of your baskets and put into it each morning 10 eggs, and take out from it each evening 9 eggs, what will eventually happen?" "It will become in time overflowing, because each day I put in 1 more egg than I take out." Arcad turned to the class with a smile. "Does any man here have a lean purse?" First they looked amused, then they laughed. Lastly, they waved their empty purses in jest. "All right," he continued. "Now I shall tell you the first remedy I learned to cure a lean purse. Do exactly as I have suggested to the egg merchant. For every 10 coins you place within your purse, take out for use but 9. Your purse will start to fatten at once, and its increasing weight will feel good in your hand and bring satisfaction to your soul. Deride not what I say because of its simplicity. Truth is always simple. I told you I would tell you how I built my fortune. This was my beginning. I too carried a lean purse and cursed it because there was not within it to satisfy my desires. But when I began to take out from my purse but 9 parts of 10 I put in, it began to fatten, and so will yours. Now I will tell you a strange truth, the reason for which I know not. When I ceased to pay out more than 9/10 of my earnings, I managed to get along just as well. I was not shorter than before. Also, before long, coins came to me more easily than before. Surely it is the law of the gods that unto him who keeps and spends not a certain part of all his earnings shall gold come more easily. Likewise, him whose purse is empty does gold avoid. Which desires you the most? Is it the gratification of your desires of each day, a jewel, a bit of finery, better clothing, more food, things quickly gone and forgotten? Or is it substantial belongings, gold, lands, herds, merchandise, income-bringing investments? The coins you take from your purse bring the first. The coins you leave within it will bring you the latter. This, my students, was the first cure I did discover for my lean purse. For each 10 coins I put in, to spend but 9. Debate this among yourselves. If any man proves it untrue, tell me tomorrow, when we shall meet again. The second cure: control your expenditures. Some of your members, my students, have asked me this: how can a man keep 1/10 of all he earns in his purse when all the coins he earns are not enough for his necessary expenses? So did Arcad address his students upon the second day. Yesterday, how many of you carried lean purses? Well, all of us, answered the class. Yet you do not all earn the same, and some earn much more than others. Some have much larger families to support, yet all purses were equally lean. Now I will tell you an unusual truth about men and sons of men, and it is this: that what each of us calls our necessary expenses will always grow to equal our incomes unless we protest to the contrary. Confuse not the necessary expenses with your desires. Each of you, together with your good families, have more desires than your earnings can gratify. And therefore are your earnings spent to gratify these desires insofar as they will go. Still you retain many ungratified desires. All men are burdened with more desires than they can gratify. Because of my wealth, do you think that I may gratify every desire? It is a false idea. There are limits to my time, there are limits to my strength, there are limits to the distance I may travel, there are limits to what I may eat, there are limits to the zest with which I may enjoy. I say to you that just as weeds grow in a field, wherever the farmer leaves space for their roots, even so freely do desires grow in men whenever there's a possibility of their being gratified. Your desires are a multitude, and those that you may gratify are but a few. Study thoughtfully your accustomed habits of living, and herein may be most often found certain accepted expenses that may wisely be reduced or eliminated. Let your motto be 100% of appreciated value demanded for each coin spent, and therefore engrave upon the clay each thing for which you desire to spend. Select those that are necessary and others that are possible through the expenditure of 9/10 of your income. Cross out the rest and consider them but a part of that great multitude of desires that must go unsatisfied, and regret them not. Budget, then, your necessary expenses. Touch not the 1/10 that is fattening your purse. Let this be your great desire that is being fulfilled. Keep working with your budget. Keep adjusting it to help you. Make it your first assistant in defending your fattening purse. Hereupon one of the students, wearing a robe of red and gold, arose and said, I am a free man. I believe that it is my right to enjoy the good things in life, and therefore do I rebel against the slavery of a budget, which determines just how much I may spend and for what. I feel it would take much pleasure from my life and make me little more than a pack horse to carry a burden. To him Arcad replied, Who, my friend, would determine your budget then? I would make it for myself, responded the protesting one. In that case, were a pack horse to budget his burden, would he include therein jewels and rugs and heavy bars of gold? Not so. He would include hay and grain and a bag of water for the desert trail. The purpose of a budget is to help your purse to fatten. It is to assist you to have your necessities and, insofar as attainable, your other desires. It is to enable you to realize your most cherished desires by defending them from your casual wishes. Like a bright light in the dark cave, your budget shows up the leaks from your purse and enables you to stop them and control your expenditures for definite and gratifying purposes. This, then, is the second cure for a lean purse. Budget your expenses, that you may have coins to pay for your necessities, to pay for your enjoyments, and to gratify your worthwhile desires without spending more than 9/10 of your earnings. The third cure: make your gold multiply. Behold, your lean purse is fattening. You have disciplined yourself to leave therein 1/10 of all you earn. You have controlled your expenditures to protect your growing treasure. Next, we will consider means to put your treasure to labor and to increase. Gold in a purse is gratifying to own and satisfies a miserly soul, but earns nothing. The gold we may retain from our earnings is but the start. The earnings it will make shall build our fortunes. And so spoke Arcad upon the third day to his class. How, therefore, may we put our gold to work? My first investment was unfortunate, for I lost all, and it's a tale I'll relate later. My first profitable investment was a loan I made to a man named Agar, a shield maker. Once each year did he buy large shipments of bronze brought from across the sea to use in his trade. Lacking sufficient capital to pay the merchants, he would borrow from those who had extra coins. He was an honorable man. His borrowing he would repay, together with a liberal rental, as he sold his shields. Each time I loaned to him, I loaned back also the rental he had paid to me. Therefore, not only did my capital increase, but its earnings likewise increased. Most gratifying was it to have these sums returned to my purse. I tell you, my students, a man's wealth is not in the coins he carries in his purse. It is in the income he builds, the golden stream that continuously flows into his purse and keeps it always bulging. That is what every man desires. That is what each of you desires, an income that continues to come whether you work or travel. Great income I've acquired, so great that I am called a very rich man. My loans to Agar were my first training in profitable investment. Gaining wisdom from this experience, I extended my loans and investments as my capital increased. From a few sources at first, from many sources later, flowed into my purse a golden stream of wealth available for such wise uses as I should decide. Behold, from my humble earnings I had begotten a horde of golden slaves, each laboring and earning more gold. And as they labored for me, so their children also labored, and their children's children, until great was the income from their combined efforts. Gold increases rapidly when making reasonable earnings, as you will see from the following. A farmer, when his first son was born, took 10 pieces of silver to a moneylender and asked him to keep it on rental for his son until he became 20 years of age. This the moneylender did, and agreed the rental should be 1/4 of its value each 4 years. The farmer asked, because the sum he had set aside as belonging to his son, that the rental be added to the principal. And when the boy had reached the age of 20 years, the farmer again went to the moneylender to inquire about the silver. The moneylender explained that because this sum had been increased by compound interest, the original 10 pieces of silver had now grown to 30 1/2 pieces. The farmer was well pleased, and because the son did not need the coins, he left them with the moneylender. When the son became 50 years of age, the father meantime having passed to the other world, the moneylender paid the son in settlement 167 pieces of silver, and thus in 50 years had the investment multiplied itself at rental almost 17 times. This, then, is the third cure for a lean purse: to put each coin to laboring, that it may reproduce its kind, even as the flocks of the field, and help bring to you income, a stream of wealth that shall flow constantly into your purse. The fourth cure: guard your treasures from loss. Misfortune loves a shining mark. Gold in a man's purse must be guarded with firmness, else it be lost. Thus it is wise that we must first secure small amounts and learn to protect them before the gods entrust us with larger. So spoke Arcad upon the fourth day to his class. Every owner of gold is tempted by opportunities whereby it would seem that he could make large sums by its investment in most plausible projects. Often friends and relatives are eagerly entering such investment and urge him to follow. The first sound principle of investment is security for your principal. Is it wise to be intrigued by larger earnings when your principal may be lost? I say not. The penalty of risk is probable loss. Study carefully, before parting with your treasure, each assurance that it may be safely reclaimed. Be not misled by your own romantic desires to make wealth rapidly. Before you loan it to any man, assure yourself of his ability to repay and his reputation for doing so, that you may not unwittingly be making him a present of your hard-earned treasure. Before you entrust it as an investment in any field, acquaint yourself with the dangers which may beset it. My own first investment was a tragedy to me at the time. The guarded savings of a year I did entrust to a brickmaker named Asmir, who was traveling over the far seas and in Tyre agreed to buy from me the rare jewels of the Phoenicians. These we would sell upon his return and divide the profits. The Phoenicians were scoundrels, though, and sold in bits of glass. My treasure was lost. Today my training would show me at once the folly of entrusting a brickmaker to buy jewels. Therefore do I advise you, from the wisdom of my experiences, be not too confident of your own wisdom in entrusting your treasures to the possible pitfalls of investments. Better by far to consult the wisdom of those experienced in handling money for profit. Such advice is freely given for the asking, and may readily possess a value equal in gold to the sum you consider investing. In truth, such is its actual value if it save you from loss. This, then, is the fourth cure for a lean purse, and of great importance if it prevent your purse from being emptied once it has become well filled. Guard your treasure from loss by investing only where your principal is safe, where it may be reclaimed if desirable, where you will not fail to collect a fair rental. Consult with wise men. Secure the advice of those experienced in the profitable handling of money. Let their wisdom protect your treasure from unsafe investment. The fifth cure: make of your dwelling a profitable investment. If a man sets aside 9 parts of his earnings upon which to live and enjoy life, and if any part of this 9 parts he can turn into a profitable investment without detriment to his well-being, then so much faster will his treasure grow. So spake Arcad to his class at their 5th session. All too many of our men of Babylon do raise their families in unseemly quarters. They do pay to exacting landlords liberal rentals for rooms where their wives have not a spot to raise the blooms that gladden a woman's heart, and their children have no place to play their games except in the unclean alleys. No man's family can fully enjoy life unless they do have a plot of ground wherein children can play in the clean earth and where the wife may raise not only blossoms but good rich herbs to feed her family. To a man's heart, it brings gladness to eat the figs from his own trees and the grapes of his own vines, to own his own domicile, and to have it a place he's proud to care for, puts confidence in his heart and greater effort behind all his endeavors. And therefore do I recommend that every man own the roof that shelters him and his family. Nor is it beyond the ability of any well-intentioned man to own his own home. Has not our great king so widely extended the walls of Babylon that within them much land is now unused and may be purchased at sums most reasonable? Also I say to you, my students, that the moneylenders gladly consider the desires of men who seek homes and land for their families. Readily may you borrow to pay the brickmaker and the builder for such commendable purposes. If you can show a reasonable portion of the necessary sum, which you yourself has provided for the purpose. Then when the house be built, you can pay the money lender with the same regularity as you did pay the landlord, because each payment will reduce your indebtedness to the money lender. A few years could satisfy his loan, and then will your heart be glad, because you'll own in your own right a valuable property, and your only cost will be the king's taxes, and your family will be more secure and happy. Thus come many blessings to the man who owns his own house, and greatly will it reduce his cost of living, making available more of his earnings for pleasures and the gratification of his desires. This, then, is the fifth cure for a lean purse. Own your own home. The sixth cure. Ensure a future income. The life of every man proceeds from his childhood to his old age. This is the path of life, and no man may deviate from it unless the gods call him prematurely to the world beyond. And therefore do I say that it behooves a man to make preparation for a suitable income in the days to come, when he's no longer young, and to make preparation for his family, should he be no longer with them to comfort and support them. This lesson shall instruct you in providing a full purse when time has made you less able to earn. And so Arcad addressed his class upon the sixth day. The man who, because of his understanding of the laws of wealth, acquires a growing surplus, should give thought to those future days. He should plan certain investments or provisions that may endure safely for many years, yet will be available when the time arrives which he has so wisely anticipated. There are diverse ways by which a man may provide with safety for his future. He may provide a hiding place and there bury a secret treasure, yet no matter with what skill it be hidden, it may nevertheless become the loot of thieves. For this reason, I recommend not this plan. A man may buy houses or lands for this purpose. If wisely chosen as to their usefulness and value in the future, they are permanent in their value, and their earnings or their sale will provide well for his purpose. A man may loan a small sum to the moneylender and increase it at regular periods. The rental which the moneylender adds to this will largely add to its increase. I do know a sandal maker named Anson, who explained to me not long ago that each week for 8 years he had deposited with his moneylender 2 pieces of silver. The moneylender had but recently given him an accounting over which he greatly rejoiced. The total of his small deposits with their rental at the customary rate of 1/4 their value for each 4 years had now become 1,040 pieces of silver. I did gladly encourage him further by demonstrating to him with my knowledge of the numbers that in 12 years more, if he would keep his regular deposits of but 2 pieces of silver each week, the moneylender would then owe him 4,000 pieces of silver, a worthy competence for the rest of his life. Surely when a small payment is made with regularity, does it produce such profitable results that no man can afford not to ensure a treasure for his old age and for the protection of his family, no matter how prosperous his business and investments may be. I would that I might say more about this. In my mind rests a belief that someday wise-thinking men will devise a plan to insure against death, whereby many men pay in but a trifling sum regularly, the aggregate making a handsome sum for the family of each member who passes to the beyond. This do I see as something desirable and which I could highly recommend, but today it's not possible, because it must reach beyond the life of any man or any partnership to operate. It must be as stable as the king's throne. Someday do I feel that such a plan shall come to pass and be a great blessing to many people, because even the first small payment will make available a snug fortune for the family of a member should he pass on. But because we live in our own day, and not in the days which are to come, must we take advantage of those means and ways of accomplishing our purposes. Therefore do I recommend to all men that they, by wise and well enough thought-out methods, do provide against a lean purse in their mature years. For a lean purse to a man no longer able to earn, or to a family without its head, is a sore tragedy. This, then, is the sixth cure for a lean purse. Provide in advance for the needs of your growing age and the protection of your family. The seventh cure: increase your ability to earn. This day do I speak to you, my students, of one of the most vital remedies for a lean purse. Yet I'll not talk of gold, but of yourselves, of the men beneath the robes of many colors who do sit before me. I will talk to you of those things within the minds and lives of men which do work for or against their success. And so did Arcad address his class upon the seventh day. Not long ago came to me a young man seeking to borrow. When I questioned him the cause of his necessity, he complained that his earnings were insufficient to pay his expenses. Thereupon I explained to him, this being the case, he was a poor customer for the moneylender, as he possessed no surplus earning capacity to repay the loan. What you need, young man, I told him, is to earn more coins. What do you do to increase your capacity to earn? Well, all that I can do, he replied. 6 times within 2 months I've approached my master to request my pay be increased, but without success. No man can go oftener than that. Arcad replied, we may smile at his simplicity, yet he did possess one of the vital requirements to increase his earnings. Within him was a strong desire to earn more, a proper and commendable desire. Preceding accomplishment must be desire. Your desires must be strong and definite. General desires are but weak longings. For a man to wish to be rich is of little purpose. For a man to desire 5 pieces of gold is a tangible desire, which he can press to fulfillment. After he has backed his desire for 5 pieces of gold with strength of purpose to secure it, next he can find similar ways to obtain 10 pieces, and then 20 pieces, and later 1,000 pieces, and behold, he has become wealthy. In learning to secure his definite small desire, he has trained himself to secure a larger one. This is the process by which wealth is accumulated, first in small sums, then in larger ones as a man learns and becomes more capable. Desires must be simple and definite. They defeat their own purpose should they be too many, too confusing, or beyond a man's training to accomplish. As a man perfects himself in his calling, even so does his ability to earn increase. In those days when I was a humble scribe, carving upon the clay for a few coppers each day, I observed that other workers did more than I, and were paid more. And therefore did I determine that I would be exceeded by none. Nor did it take long for me to discover the reason for their greater success. More interest in my work, more concentration upon my task, more persistence in my effort, and behold, few men could carve more tablets in a day than I. With reasonable promptness, my increased skill was rewarded, nor was it necessary for me to go 6 times to my master to request recognition. The more of wisdom we know, the more we may earn. That man who seeks to learn more of his craft shall be richly rewarded. If he is an artisan, he may seek to learn the methods and the tools of those more skillful in the same line. If he labors at the law or at healing, he may consult and exchange knowledge with others of his calling. If he be a merchant, he may continually seek better goods that can be purchased at lower prices. Always do the affairs of man change and improve, because keen-minded men seek greater skill, that they may better serve those upon whose patronage they depend. And therefore I urge all men to be in the front rank of progress and not to stand still, lest they be left behind. Many things come to make a man's life rich with gainful experiences. Such things as the following a man must do if he respects himself. He must pay his debts with all the promptness within his power, not purchasing that for which he's unable to pay. He must take care of his family, that they may think and speak well of him. He must make a will of record, that in case the gods call him, proper and honorable division of his property be accomplished. He must have compassion upon those who are injured or smitten by misfortune, and aid them within reasonable limits. He must do deeds of thoughtfulness to those dear to him. Thus, the seventh and last remedy for a lean purse is to cultivate your own powers, to study and become wiser, to become more skillful, to so act as to respect yourself. Thereby shall you acquire confidence in yourself to achieve your carefully considered desires. These, then, are the 7 cures for a lean purse, which out of the experience of a long and successful life, I do urge for all men who desire wealth. There is more gold in Babylon, my students, than you dream of. There is abundance for all. Go you forth and practice these truths, that you may prosper and grow wealthy, as is your right. Go you forth and teach these truths, that every honorable subject of His Majesty may also share liberally in the ample wealth of our beloved city. This is Dennis Waitley speaking now, not Arcad, the richest man in Babylon. You know, I'm in awe of this practical wisdom, spoken by a successful entrepreneur more than 4,000 years ago. He's the Warren Buffett, the Sam Walton, the Bill Gates, the Oprah Winfrey of his time, who learned to do certain things in certain ways. Becoming financially independent is really very simple, but no one ever said it was easy, because it requires discipline, sticking to a plan, and having the will and motivation to track your income and expenses and save at least 1/10 of all you earn for your future. The message you have just heard, if understood and implemented, is better advice than you'll ever receive from the latest New York Times bestseller or from the current seminar leader talking about the road to gold and wealth. So listen to this message more than once. And if you internalize it, you will surely realize your dreams. A bag heavy with gold or a clay tablet carved with words of wisdom? If you had your choice, which would you choose? By the flickering light from the fire of desert shrubs, the sun-tanned faces of the listeners gleamed with interest. The gold, chorused the 27. Old Kalabob smiled knowingly. Hark, he resumed, raising his hand. Hear the wild dogs out there in the night? They howl and wail because they are lean with hunger, and yet feed them, and what do? Fight and strut, then fight and strut some more, giving no thought to the morrow that will surely come. And just so it is with the sons of men. Give them a choice of gold and wisdom, and what do? Ignore the wisdom and waste the gold. On the morrow they wail because they have no more gold. Gold is reserved for those who know its laws and abide by them. Kalabob drew his white robe close about his lean legs, for a cool night wind was blowing. Because you have served me faithfully upon our long journey, and because you cared well for my camels, because you toiled uncomplainingly across the hot sands of the desert, because you fought bravely the robbers that sought to despoil my merchandise, I will tell you this night the tale of the 5 laws of gold, such a tale as you have never heard before. Hark ye with deep attention to the words I speak, for if you grasp their meaning and heed them, in the days that come you shall have much gold. He paused impressively. Above in a canopy of blue, the stars shone brightly in the crystal-clear skies of Babylonia. Behind the group loomed their faded tents tightly staked against possible desert storms. Beside the tents were neatly stacked bales of merchandise covered with skins. Nearby the camel herd sprawled in the sand, some chewing their cuds contentedly, others snoring in hoarse discord. You have told us many good tales, Kalabob, spoke up the chief packer. We look to your wisdom to guide us upon the morrow when our service with you shall be at an end. I have told you of my adventures in strange and distant lands, said Kalabob, but this night I shall tell you of the wisdom of Arcad, the wise rich man. Much have we heard of him, acknowledged the chief packer, for he was the richest man that ever lived in Babylon. the richest man he was, and that was because he was wise in the ways of gold, even as no man had ever been before him. This night shall I tell you of his great wisdom, as it was told to me by Namasur his son, many years ago in Nineveh, when I was but a lad. My master and myself had tarried long into the night in the palace of Namasur. I had helped my master bring great bundles of fine rugs, each to be tried by Namasur until his choice of colors was satisfied. At last he was well pleased, and commanded us to sit with him and to drink a rare vintage, odorous to the nostrils and most warming to my stomach. Then did he tell us this tale of the great wisdom of Arcad his father, even as I shall tell it to you. In Babylon it is the custom, as you know, that the sons of wealthy fathers live with their parents in expectation of inheriting the estate. Arcad did not approve of this custom. Therefore, when Namasur reached man's estate, he sent for the young man and addressed him. My son, it is my desire that you succeed to my estate. You must, however, first prove that you are capable of wisely handling it, and therefore I wish that you go out into the world and show your ability both to acquire gold and to make yourself respected among men. To start you well, I will give you 2 things of which I myself was denied when I started as a poor youth to build a fortune. First, I give you this bag of gold. If you use it wisely, it will be the basis of your future success. Second, I give you this clay tablet upon which is carved the 5 laws of gold. If you do but interpret them in your own acts, they shall bring you competence and security. 10 years from this day, come you back to the house of your father, and give account of yourself. If you prove worthy, I will then make you the heir to my estate. Otherwise, I will give it to the priests, that they may barter for my soul the kind consideration of the gods. So Namasur went forth to make his own way, taking his bag of gold, the clay tablet carefully wrapped in silken cloth, and the horses upon which they rode. The 10 years passed, and Namasur, as he had agreed, returned to the house of his father, who provided a great feast in his honor, to which he invited many friends and relatives. After the feast was over, the father and mother mounted their throne-like seats at one side of the great hall, and Namasur stood before them to give an account of himself, as he had promised to his father. It was evening. The room was hazy with smoke from the wicks of the oil lamps that but dimly lighted it. A stately dignity colored the scene. The wife of Namasur and their 2 young sons, with friends and other members of the family, sat upon rugs behind him, eager listeners. "My father," he began deferentially, "I bow before your wisdom. 10 years ago, when I stood at the gates of manhood, you told me to go forth and become a man among men, instead of remaining a vassal to your fortune. You gave me liberally of your gold. You gave me liberally of your wisdom. Of the gold, alas, I must admit, of a disastrous handling. It fled, indeed, from my inexperienced hands, even as a wild hare flees at the first opportunity from the youth who captures it." The father smiled indulgently. "Continue, my son. Your tale interests me in all its details." "Well, father, I decided to go to Nineveh, as it was a growing city, believing that I might find there opportunities. I joined a caravan and among its members made numerous friends. 2 well-spoken men who had a most beautiful white horse as fleet as the wind were among these. As we journeyed, they told me in confidence that in Nineveh there was a wealthy man who owned a horse so swift that it had never been beaten. Its owner believed that no horse living could run with greater speed, and therefore would he wager any sum, however large, that his horse could outspeed any horse in all Babylon. Compared to their horse, so my friends said, it was but a lumbering jackass that could be beaten with ease. And they offered as a great favor to permit me to join them in a wager, and I was quite carried away with the plan. Our horse was badly beaten, and I lost most of my gold. Later I discovered that this was a deceitful plan of these men, and that they constantly journeyed with caravans seeking victims. You see, the man in Nineveh was their partner, and shared with them the bets he won. This shrewd deceit taught me my first lesson in looking out for myself. I was soon to learn another equally bitter. In the caravan was another young man with whom I became quite friendly. He was the son of wealthy parents, and like myself, journeying to Nineveh to find a suitable location. Not long after our arrival, he told me that a merchant had died and his shop with its rich merchandise and patronage could be secured at a paltry price, saying that we would be equal partners, but first he must return to Babylon to secure his gold. He prevailed upon me to purchase the stock with my gold, agreeing that his would be used later to carry on our venture. Well, he long delayed the trip to Babylon, proving in the meantime to be an unwise buyer and a foolish spender. I finally put him out, but not before the business had deteriorated to where we had only unsaleable goods and no gold to buy other goods. I sacrificed what was left to an Israelite for a pitiful sum. And soon there followed, I will tell you, my father, bitter days. I sought employment and found it not, for I was without trade or training that would enable me to earn. I sold my horses, I sold my extra robes that I might have food and a place to sleep, but each day grim want crouched closer. But in those bitter days, I remembered your confidence in me, my father. You had sent me forth to become a man, and this I was determined to accomplish. His mother buried her face and wept softly. At this time, I thought about the tablet you had given me upon which you had carved the 5 laws of gold. Thereupon I read most carefully your words of wisdom, and realized that had I but sought wisdom first, my gold would not have been lost to me. I learned by heart each law, and determined that when once more the goddess of good fortune smiled upon me, I would be guided by the wisdom of age and not by the inexperience of youth. For the benefit of you who are seated here this night, I will read the wisdom of my father as engraved upon the clay tablet which he gave to me 10 years ago. These are the 5 laws of gold engraved on the clay tablet. 1. Gold comes gladly and in increasing quantity to any man who will put aside not less than 1/10 of his earnings to create an estate for his future and that of his family. 2. Gold labors diligently and contentedly for the wise owner who finds for it profitable employment, multiplying even as the flocks of the field. 3. Gold clings to the protection of the cautious owner who invests it under the advice of individuals wise in its handling. 4. Gold slips away from the man who invests it in business or purposes with which he is not familiar, or which are not approved by those skilled in its keep. 5. Gold flees the man who would force it to impossible earnings, or who would follow the alluring advice of tricksters and schemers, or who trust it to his own inexperience and romantic desires in investment. These are the 5 laws of gold as written by my father. I do proclaim them as of greater value than gold itself, as I will show by the continuance of my tale. He again faced his father. I have told you of the depth of poverty and despair to which my inexperience brought me. However, there is no chain of disasters that will not come to an end, and mine came when I secured employment, managing a crew working upon the new outer wall of the city. Profiting from my knowledge of the first law of gold, I saved a copper from my first earnings, adding to it at every opportunity, until I had a piece of silver. It was a slow procedure, for one must live. I did spend grudgingly, I admit, because I was determined to earn back before the 10 years were over as much gold as you, my father, had given me. One day the crewmaster, with whom I had become quite friendly, said to me, "You are a thrifty youth who spends not wantonly what he earns. Have you gold put aside that is not earning?" "Yes," I replied, "it is my greatest desire to accumulate gold to replace that which my father gave to me, which I have lost." "That's a worthy ambition," his employer said, "and do you know that the gold which you have saved can work for you and earn much more gold?" Alas, my experience has been bitter, for my father's gold has fled from me, and I am in much fear lest my own do the same. If you have confidence in me, I will give you a lesson in the profitable handling of gold, he replied. Within a year, the outer wall will be complete and ready for the great gates of bronze that will be built at each entrance to protect the city from the king's enemies. In all Nineveh, there is not enough metal to make these gates, and the king has not thought to provide it. Here is my plan. A group of us will pool our gold and send a caravan to the mines of copper and tin which are distant, and bring to Nineveh the metal for the gates. When the king says, "Make the great gates," we alone can supply the metal, and a rich price he will pay. And if the king will not buy from us, we will yet have the metal, which can be sold for a fair price. In his offer, Father, I recognized an opportunity to abide by the third law and invest my savings under the guidance of wise men. Nor was I disappointed. Our pool was a success, and my small store of gold was greatly increased by the transaction. In due time, I was accepted as a member of this same group in other ventures. They were men wise in the profitable handling of gold. They talked over each plan presented with great care before entering upon it. They would take no chance on losing their principal or tying it up in unprofitable investments from which their gold could not be recovered. Such foolish things as the horse race and the partnership into which I had entered with my inexperience would have had scant consideration with them. They would have immediately pointed out their weaknesses. Through my association with these men, I learned to safely invest gold to bring profitable returns, and as the years went on, my treasure increased more and more rapidly. I not only made as much as I lost, but much more. Through my misfortunes, my trials, and my success, I've tested time and again the wisdom of the 5 laws of gold, my Father, and have proven them true in every test. To him who is without knowledge of the 5 laws, gold comes not often and goes away quickly. But to him who abides by the 5 laws of gold, gold comes and works as his dutiful slave. Namaster ceased speaking and motioned to